You're watching and listening to Conscious Evolution Media, shifting global consciousness at consciousevolutionmedia.com.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Kids Talk Foundation, a global nonprofit organization providing youth advocacy, television programming, and training services in the United States, along with comprehensive medical and educational services for the developing world, most recently in Kenya, Africa, where Kids Talk Foundation provides a feeding program, medical care, and educational services to over 1,300 young people each day. Please help our youth and place your donation. Go to www.kidstalk.org. Are you in the entertainment industry? If you answered yes and you want to promote yourself, your passion, and profession, check out Creative Independent Artist magazines at CIAartists.com, endorsed by Kids Talk Foundation worldwide.
Welcome to the Ninan Speaks Internet TV show. Ninan is an international entrepreneur and philanthropist who's become an influential and positive role model for thousands of people all over the world. Drawing on a rich tapestry of experience from her adventures both in front of and behind the camera, Ninan captivates, entertains, and inspires audiences from all walks of life. Her motto is, "Nothing happens without you." Now, here's your host, Ninan de Verde Rosa.
Well, welcome to Ninan Speaks, to another adventure and another journey into another person's life. And our guest today is Tob Dempsey, and an amazing guy. I just actually received his bio, and I've been quickly running through it, and wow, what a life he has had. An amazing guy. But the life he sort of started out with and what he did and the things that happened to him and whatever it was, which we're going to find out shortly, sort of brought his career where it is now, and sort of helping others and doing an awful lot in this this world of drugs, guns. The world's gone crazy, and I think as people, we started it, and I think as people, we should kind of take control of it and bring it back to kind of being a little bit more normal and a little bit more love in our hearts, because as Steve Toth says, if you don't have love in your heart, how can you give love out? So anyway, let me introduce Tob Dempsey. How are you?
Oh, I'm very well. How are you?
I'm absolutely amazing. It's so good to have you on the show and to listen to what you have to say. And your bio is very long, so I obviously didn't get through the whole thing. Yeah. But I read enough to understand, you know, where you're coming from. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your younger childhood of drugs and not being able to watch television unless you had a weed or you smoked weed or whatever the case was.
Yeah. How was I to do anything
without drugs? Yeah.
Without drugs. Yeah. Well, I you know, it started early in my life. Yeah, I want to make it clear right now. You know, I'm a recovery coach. I'm an addictions counselor now. I'm in a much better place, but let's start, you know, where it all began.
From the beginning, where it started. Right. 12 years old, 11 years old?
Yeah, it was around 12 years old was the first time. I think it was 11 years old, I smoked my first cigarette. And I always say that really is the gateway drug for a lot of people. A lot say it's marijuana, and I can see that. But, you know, that cigarette was the first time I felt a high.
Was it because when you inhaled it, you kind of took it down, you thought, oh, it feels good?
Right, yeah, it made me a little lightheaded. It lasted for about 5 minutes, but it was 5 minutes of absolute pleasure. But not only that, but it was the sneaking it from my mother's pack. It was going in the backyard. You know, the whole adventure of getting away with this stuff was very appealing to me at that young, ornery age.
Well, yeah, at that age, you'll always kind of want to sort of be behind your mom and try to play the tricks and play the games of trying to do something your mom and dad can't see or don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The games we play.
Yeah, you know, it evolved. It evolved to, you know, marijuana smoking, and then, you know, for a few years, that's what it was. It was just the marijuana. And it's funny for me to hear myself even say the word just the marijuana, because I'll get to that in a little bit. Yeah. But really, that's the way I viewed it at the time. It was natural. It's not a big deal.
Now, how did you, at 12 years old, we'll keep going, but I want to know how at 12 years old, how did you have the money to buy this?
I actually worked at a very young age, so I was able to. I didn't steal or do anything discrediting to get the finances for that. But at that time, $10 or $20 would last me, maybe a week, worth of the marijuana.
Did you work to buy the marijuana, or did you work because you wanted the money?
Both. Both. At that time.
So you were actually working so you could buy the marijuana. Was that going on your head?
Oh, yeah. Anytime, it was always nice to know that I could if I wanted to. And then, as I aged, it might have been like, Mom, I need a book for school, something like that. I need this or that. Can I have $20 to buy the book, or, whatever it may be.
Was that because your habit was getting a little bit heavier and you needed a little more, and you were going into other things and it cost more?
Right. Well, what happened was the marijuana, it was a daily thing. I couldn't go to school without trying to get a few puffs in the morning. I wouldn't be able to watch TV and enjoy it or see a movie like, I had talked about in the bio, without having something, like it can't possibly be fun unless I have, this something marijuana.
Yeah. But that's your question. When people smoke marijuana, and I personally haven't done any of this stuff for whatever reason, I don't know, but I didn't get involved in that. But doesn't it have an odor and a smell to it? And wouldn't your mother or father know that there was a smell in the house that was different to what they had? Yeah, and it's amazing what denial does, and I see it happen to a million families. My father would say, "Stop burning that incense." He was so he was so ignorant to the drug scene. Well, wait a second. Was he in denial of knowing what it was, or did he really didn't know what it was? He didn't really find out? He didn't come to your room and say, "What? Let me see that incense"? Never? Well, I think there was a state of avoidance, because I would be in the basement doing my thing, and he would smell the incense, come up through the basement. But he would never go down there. Huh. So he was in denial of seeing what his son was doing. Were you the only child in the family? No, I had 3 older brothers, which, had a good part in teaching me what was supposedly normal. They were marijuana smokers themselves. I had an older brother who's now a pastor, a wonderful guy. But he, got pretty deep in the drugs. But marijuana, looking back on it, was the least of my problems, because what happens was it developed into me seeking out other drugs, harder highs, things that I think, I was turned on to heroin because it was so taboo. Heroin? Oh, yes. But that's really strong. Yeah, it's really strong. So I'm going to back up a little bit, because I just want to find out. And the reason I want to find this out, because I want to reach, I'm very into the younger generation. And I just want to reach out as to how you sort of got there. You got there. Were your brothers older than you? My brothers were older than me. So they influenced you on taking drugs, and they kind of said it was okay. Did they introduce you to the marijuana? The marijuana, yes. The harder drugs, no. I did that all on my own. Yeah, but would that be because you started the marijuana and now you wanted something a little bit stronger, a little bit harder, because you got used to the marijuana? Right, well, I wanted something, that, I guess the marijuana was just normal. There was nothing really exciting about it. Remember, I was the kid that liked the idea of sneaking out in the backyard. Yeah. So I wasn't turning enough heads with marijuana. But you saw the reaction you just had when I said the word heroin. Yes, I did. Yeah. Right, your eyes light up. I know what it is, and I'm like thinking, from marijuana to heroin, that's a big dramatic move. Yeah, you would think it is. It's really not, especially these days, because the kids are turning now to the prescription drugs, the pills, the very cabinets in their homes.
you know, a lot of parents have anti-anxiety medicines just right in their medicine cabinet. They have Percocets or Oxycontin, which are morphine-based, the same as heroin.
How do all these young people get to know what these pills are and what they're for and how they can get a high on them? How do they know this at such a young age?
Well, there's an epidemic happening right now. When we have on TV constantly, and I'm not opposed to this at all, but when there's constantly messages about addiction recovery and I, you know, decided to get off of opiate painkillers and, you know, there's always a risk when you're warning people about the dangers of drugs that you're also introducing another audience to that drug.
Yeah. Yes.
I do prevention presentations a lot, and for parents and for students alike. Now, with parents, I can tell them, you know, on the internet there's an array of drugs that are now available to your children. I can talk specifically about bath salts. I can tell them about, you know, the K2, the synthetic marijuana. I can give them names. I can give them the sites that maybe their kids could be traveling to. But when I do a presentation for kids, I have to be careful not to mention the names of the drugs that are there.
Go out and get them.
because half the crowd is thinking.
But writing it down, thinking, oh, this is a good drug.
Yeah, that's what Well, that's why the DARE program really didn't work out too well for a lot of schools and a lot of communities, because the police officer would come in and have this briefcase that showed you what each one of the drugs looked like, how much they cost on the street on average, and tell you about the trouble you could get into. Yeah, but now you just showed me exactly what cocaine...
That was educating them to go out and buy the drug and find out what the drug is, how much it costs and everything.
Right.
Oh my! So rather than they were thinking, and I'm sure they were doing it in a good heart and doing it in a good way, that they were trying to help the children and the parents, whatever they're trying to do, and it backfired on them.
It did. You know, it's funny. I look back. I remember the DARE officer coming to my classroom. He had a little teddy bear with him. It was the DARE bear. I think it was Yogi the Bear. I still have that because I stole it from him. Those years ago. I mean, I was an ornery little squirt. I mean, I really just...
Stole everything. You even stole from a cop.
Yes. 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 You know, and that's what it was for me, was the idea of trying to raise the bar of excitement. And what that led into was a full-blown addiction to polysubstances for me. And it totaled my living, as it does to most people.
Most people. On that, we're going to take a break. Every 15 minutes, we have to take a break. We're going to take a break and come right back. And I just want to go back to a little bit when you started and how you went into what you're doing now. We'll be right back with
That's great.
Do you need a marketing and branding engine to drive leads into your website and product funnels? We will distribute your video, audio, blog content, and build backlinks, including social proof, and much more, to all corners of the internet, designed to attract prospects and the search engines. Visit www.realcoachingradio.net or call 303-997-2664 for more information.
Would you like to host your own internet TV show? Express that one thing that you're passionate about to millions of people? Speak your mind. Create deeper and longer-lasting relationships with your viewers. Create value, deliver results, and effectively build your personal brand. For more information, go to www.realcoachingradio.net or call 303-997-2664.
Would you like to put your front-end marketing system on autopilot? We'll provide you with pre-built squeeze pages, sales pages, e-commerce integration, and membership portals to capture more leads, deliver more content, convert more sales, and keep clients for the long term. For more information, go to www.realcoachingradio.net or call 303-997-2664. You're watching and listening to Conscious Evolution Media, shifting global consciousness at consciousevolutionmedia.com.
Welcome back to Ninan Speaks. We have an incredible guest, and we're talking about drugs. His name is Todd Dempsey, and he has a fascinating story. And what really fascinates me is that when he was 11, 12 years old, when he started drugs, his family never knew. and nobody ever knew what he was doing. And he had 4 brothers that were doing the same thing. Mum and Dad never knew. Did Mum and Dad know, Todd?
Oh, not about me. They had no idea what the extent of what I was doing. In fact, they didn't probably find out about maybe 10 years ago. I told them.
10 years ago?
Yeah, about because I got myself clean, and it was time to talk about my past, and I actually opened up to them about what I was doing at that young age, when they thought everything, they thought I was a little wild and crazy, which is, I still am.
Well, yeah, well, that's what makes you fascinating. We have to take another break. And I'll tell you why, Todd, we're taking a break, because obviously you must be fascinating. They obviously love the show. Blog TV picked us up, and we're now featured on Blog TV, which I always like to say thank you very much. We have a tremendous amount of viewers already wanting to listen what we have to say all about the drug business. And I'm going to go a little bit also into the gun business, because guns and drugs seem to be hand in hand at the moment, a little bit. But I want to find out how and why mothers and fathers or whomever are looking after these children, how come it just passes by and they never know? I don't get that.
Well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about
my mum and dad, believe me, my mother and father knew everything I did. If I was 5 minutes late coming back from work, which was 10 o'clock at night, and I was 16, and if I wasn't there, my father's standing out there on the doorstep and also walking down the road to see where I was.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what they did, but that was a couple of years ago. And so why and what are parents supposed to look out for, and why are they sort of turning away from it, or why are they not acknowledging what's going on with their kids? Because if they don't acknowledge what's going on with their kids, why have kids? If you can't, right. I'm not saying you can't look after them, because a lot of parents are absolutely fabulous. But there's a lot of drugs out there, more than ever. And it's like when you did it, it was sneaky. So they are being sneaky.
Well, and the kids now, they actually have a better chance of being sneaky. And that's why I put so much effort into teaching parents about what their kids are doing these days, because there's different drugs out there that are a lot less hard. It's, even drug tests won't pick them up. So, yeah. Do we need to take a break? Is that what we're doing? I don't want to talk through it.
More breaks, because Blog TV picked us up and we have more breaks, so we can just run through with this thing.
I thought we had to take a break because they wanted to advertise. They figured we have so many viewers. Let's
TV are amazing, and I love having them on. But,
okay, well then I'll just get into answering your about why parents don't notice this stuff. These aren't bad parents that we're talking about here. Yeah. They just are uneducated about what's out there and what's actually present in their communities. Because when you hear a word like heroin, you think your mind goes to this inner city kind of dump. No, there's kids right here in our own communities, in our nice suburban towns, that are shooting up like it's, just normal behavior.
Well, and a lot of people don't understand that you do not have to be wealthy or well-to-do to take drugs. There's other ways.
No, that's the thing about drugs. It hits all classes.
And everybody thinks that it's always in the people that are poorer, or the people that don't have any money, or the down-and-out people, and that is not so. That is not so.
It's not.
I need to get this stuff, don't you? Hello?
Yeah, absolutely. There was when it does come to as far as socioeconomics, when you're looking at that, when I was dealing drugs myself, when I was on the other side of things, when the economy crashed and people started losing their jobs, I said that's good for business for me, because people are now down and out and they're looking for attention release, and they're going to come to me as the drug dealer to, get away from that tension. This is when they're going to start drinking more. This is when they're going to start maybe even pumping more money into their TVs and anything that gets them away from that tension. Socioeconomics, yes, it plays into it. But a lot of the business I got when I was dealing was from the upper class people who didn't want to go into the ghettos themselves.
Well, wait a minute. When you were dealing, now we're getting into something where you actually selling this and doing it all?
Yeah. It got to the point where I was
Now, let's just back up, because you actually
yeah.
had to, you were taking drugs and you were doing all this stuff. You obviously, finished high school, and then you went in to learn psychology, right, at college.
Right. Yes.
And how did you learn that if you were always high?
Well, I'm bipolar. I don't know how familiar you are with that disorder.
I'm very familiar. Very.
Okay. We experience very high highs and very low lows.
Correct.
So to be addicted to both heroin and cocaine was my self-medication. If I was really low, I would take the cocaine. If I was extraordinarily high and manic, I could take the drugs. And then plus my body built up a tolerance for this stuff. And as far as the psychology went for me, and it still is to this day, it is an absolute passion of mine. It's not work. It's something that's from my heart. And I was always very, very influenced by psychology. In fact, I got into psychology, and this is awful to say, but it's the truth, and that's where I think we need...
the truth.
You want the truth. That's what I want as a counselor as well. Give me the truth. The truth of the matter is, truth of the matter is, I got into psychology because as a young boy, I was very, I was amazed at World War II. I thought it was the most amazing war because there was this man, Adolf Hitler, who had convinced an entire population of people that not only could he bring them back to power, but he pinpointed the cause of their troubles on another race and on another culture. And he actually got people to perform these horrific acts, and that manipulation inspired me to get into psychology. I didn't get into psychology in the beginning to help people. No, I got into it to help myself.
Because you wanted to find out more about it, and how did this guy get to where he got?
To know how to manipulate people. That's what I wanted to know.
I wanted to know. Well, that started at 12 o'clock because you were sneaking things.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
From sneaking, you went to manipulation.
Right. Yes. I mean,
Same sort of thing.
It all makes sense, right?
To you it did. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so that's what got me into psychology. So it was actually part of the deviance, too. So it kept my mind and I was focused on my studies because they helped me be a better, felon, really, when it comes down to it. I always say that police should take a lot of psychology courses. I remember, I want to remind people that this is not who I am anymore. But, I remember being interrogated by police, and they really had no concept of body language. They had no concept of the tones in people's voices, the way that people's eyes move. All this would be very helpful.
Very important and very helpful to a police officer of arresting somebody to understand that person.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I remember, being interrogated.
Why would they have time? Well, I have to ask you a question then. How would they have time to start interrogating somebody when they're trying to arrest them?
Well, it's after the arrest.
Oh, okay.
When they get you in that back room and they're trying to really, boost up the charges on you, and when they're trying to find other people that you're doing deals with, I think it would be very helpful to them. Now, a person who's not going to talk isn't going to talk, and that's it. But I think it would be very helpful for them to learn some psychology because
to be a little bit more diplomatic, to get things out of people rather than things so rough and so heavy, because then when somebody's like that, you sort of clam up, you say, oh, I don't want to deal with this guy, so I'm not going to tell him anything. And I think I would agree with that, but, the poor police, they have to do so much. Not that I really feel sorry for them, because they give a lot of tickets out, but at the same time, they have a hard job. They have a very, very tough.
They absolutely do.
So did you serve time in jail?
No, I was far too manipulative for that. Yeah,
should have known that.
No, I made enough money to pay off the prosecutor's office. I don't want to get into it too much, because that's a life that's behind me. But no, I never had to spend.
What made the change? What made the change in you to decide that you really wanted to sort of, start teaching, which is the discovery program you have, and sort of stop taking all these drugs yourself? What kind of happened in your life for that?
Of course, this question was going to come up, and I've given it a lot of thought over all the years. In fact, it's a question that a lot of people ask when you tell them you're in recovery. most of us who are addicts, we begin our recovery in a treatment center usually because of some external influence, whether it's mom and dad, or it's a spouse, or it's an employer. They say your drug addiction has gone too far and you need treatment, and if you don't receive this treatment, this or this is going to happen to you. And that's the same thing that happened with me. I was put into a treatment center because I had tried to commit suicide. And when they did the drug test on me, they found X, Y, and Z, everything under the sun, a pharmacy in me, and so they put me to the rehab. And my wife, she had enough at the time. I mean, because I always tell people, you don't have to use drugs for that addiction to ruin your well-being. All you need is someone in your life that you to have an addiction to ruin your well-being. And that's what I did. I was ruining people that I cared about, their well-being.
Now, your wife, when you met your wife, was she into drugs? And did she know you took drugs? Did she know you took drugs?
She didn't. She didn't know in the beginning, but the more that we, lived together and got closer, the more I opened up. And now here I am. What we do as addicts is we minimize it. We minimize the damage that we're doing. So that's what I did with her, like I did with everybody. But eventually the evidence was clear. What came out of my mouth was not matching what
was inside of you and what you were doing.
What was really happening to our family and to our life.
Are you still married to her?
I am.
Isn't that beautiful? So she went through all this.
She did, and if it wasn't for her support, I really don't know where I am today. Having her to love me through that, because I did a lot of damage to her, and I did a lot of damage to everybody I cared about. But to have her stick with me and remember who I was before I could remember it myself, it's a blessing that it's priceless. It really is.
What was your worst moment, your worst real down moment when you were taking all these drugs?
I would say it was definitely the moments before I tried to commit suicide. Yeah. It was a feeling of pure hopelessness. I had tried to get off the drugs so many times, and I tried to change my ways, and I just kept finding myself back into it. And I finally said, a lot of people say that suicide is selfish, and it's the lazy way out. And I get what they're saying, but if you've ever been through such severe depression that you're considering suicide, a lot of the people that I've worked with, and even myself, our thought is the world would be better without me. My wife would be safer and my child would be safer if I wasn't here, because what I'm doing is just bringing sorrow and damage, and there's nothing I could do about it.
Did you just feel that you were kind of not a good person, you were a bad person, you didn't like, in other words, you didn't really like you?
No, I didn't, because, like I said, it all started because I was trying to be a little troublemaker, but what happened was...
it really started with bipolar.
Right, it did, absolutely.
That's where it started, because you told me you had bipolar, and I know what bipolar is. I have friends that their children have it or they have it, and I know what that is. So that's really where it started, that probably you were trying to get out of the agony of those schizo different feelings you were having.
Well, I tell you, the first time I smoked marijuana was age 12. Well, that was also the first time that I had ever put a rope up in my basement thinking about hurting myself. So the correlation, I'm not saying is a causation, but it's there. I mean, it's quite evident that I was going through some emotional troubles at that time, and the marijuana seemed to help heal that out. Now, we weren't diagnosing children with bipolar disorder at that time, and we really, even ADHD wasn't something that we talked about. You were either a good kid or a bad kid.
Yeah.
I was a bad kid. And
was that put into your head? That was put into your head. Was that put into your head from your mother and father and your teachers and different people, or was it just what you thought?
No, my parents always have been so proud of me and so supportive, so loving. I came from a very loving home, and even in my times, they always, like my wife, found that piece of light that maybe I didn't even see. But the teachers who had to put up with me, and I look back and I think, wow, it must have been tough, because I was quite a bit of a troublemaker.
A little all over the place. Having a lot of
Yeah, I definitely entertained myself, for sure. But it was disruptive to the classroom, and so that's what it was. You were a bad kid, not a bad person. You were just bad behavior.
Kid. And so moving along, so we've gone through your 12 years and your 18 years. We went through into college. You graduated as a psychiatrist.
No, right now I'm a counselor of drug and alcohol, addictions counselor. I'm not quite at my doctorate level yet.
That's okay.
So I have, I guess, a psychologist / drug and alcohol counselor. That's where I am
now.
And I'm still going to school.
You still going to school?
Oh, I can't stop. I told you, it's a passion. It's an absolute love that I have.
You've got to always do something in life that you love, and if that's your passion and you love it,
yeah, you have to. There is something I want to say. I didn't mention, and like I said, a lot of us start treatment because of an external influence. Mm-hmm. The truth in my recovery happened when I finally wanted the recovery, when I realized I couldn't live with myself anymore. It was just about at the point where my wife said, don't even come home. And I thought I was losing my wife. And at that moment, I realized if I'm going to heal, it can't be for any external influence to get benefits from outside of myself. I need to heal because I need to feel the benefits internally.
Within. You've got to do it within.
And that's why they always say, an addict's not going to change until they're ready. Well, that's exactly what that means, is there's a time where you can't even look at yourself. And you realize, no matter how hard change is, it's better than what I'm doing right now. And so that's what influenced me, was in fact, my own sense of shame and guilt and, just misery.
Well, you probably felt you were losing everything, especially when your wife said she couldn't take it anymore, and she had obviously tried awfully hard over the years. And you probably felt, well, I don't want to lose her. That's kind of the only thing I have, and the only person in this world that really understands me. So that I better get my act together. So that kind of triggered something within your body.
Yeah,
I mean, if people something, whatever it was.
People don't do anything and they don't make a ruckus for the addict, they're never going to change. The more that we try to make it easier on the addict to not go through withdrawal or, not disrupt the family but still let them use, we're not doing them any favors, and we're not doing ourselves any favors as well. And that kind of goes back to the parents thing. Why don't they notice? They don't notice because they don't want to disrupt the balance within their family. And that's where the denial comes in. They don't see, because once you identify something like drug abuse or even bad grades, there's a lot of parents that don't even want to confront their kids about the fact that they're getting D's on their report card, because they don't want to do that.
They don't want to disrupt. They don't want to disrupt the level of where they are.
Right. Sometimes it's easier, it's seemingly easier to just pretend it's not there.
So what advice would you, since we're talking about this, what advice can we give our audience out there? How would a parent who is in denial of what's going on, so say they probably kind of know what's going on, but they're in denial because they like how it's sort of settled and how do we get them out of that to actually help their child?
We all know that drugs are out there. We all know this.
So. Of course we do.
It's all over the TV. It's all over our neighborhoods. What you do is you talk to your children. Ask them questions. Don't assume anything.
Communication.
Communication is key, and that's why I think prevention is so near and dear to my heart. Because if we can stop it before it starts, we never have to go through rehab. We never have to go through these things. If we talk to our children and we're open and honest with them and we stick in that reality, like I talked about, kids go through a lot of emotional situations in their youth. We all did. It's a time of development.
The children are no different now than they ever
Right.
were. Children are
Right.
children. They're all the same as for years and years and years. They're the same. We just have different things going on, and they have actually access now to the internet and to a lot of things that probably you and I didn't have. So they're a little bit more out there, and they can actually be on their own but still have something going on through the internet because they can talk to their friends.
The internet is the new enemy when it comes to substance abuse. Kids can log on to the computer, and there are underground markets for street drugs out there where you can literally just order LSD on the internet. But there's also these online pharmacies where basically the kid can go on, answer a questionnaire about their medical history. It's all false information, but there's some doctor who reviews this form and approves their prescription and sends it. There's never a physical, there's never anything like that. And there was a...
How can children get onto these sites? Don't parents kind of, I guess parents aren't there all the time when they're on their computers.
Yeah, well, see, the kids not only now have the home computer, but they have the iPods, they have pretty much everything under the sun these kids have. They've got cell phones at age 10 now. Kids have cell phones, and they have internet access on the cell phone. So it's almost impossible to block everything, but it is very possible to block most of it, to make it hard for your kids.
But then if a kid blocks it, one kid is really good, or the parents are really good, and they block all these things for their kids.
I'll just use a friend's computer.
That's what I was going to say. I go to school, and I say, Mum just blocked me from all this stuff. Give me your computer, and we'll do it together. And the other kid's excited because now they've got a partner to go through all this stuff.
Right. So the access is there. It's about educating our kids of these dangers. It's not about black and white. It's bad. Teaching kids about the reality of these substances. Don't lie to kids. No, drugs feel great. People wouldn't do it if they didn't feel so damn good. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. But there's also another truth to it, that it tears up your insides, that it tears up your brain, it destroys your relationships. That's another truth of it. Yeah. So, I do a presentation for teens, and it's called Let's Get High. Feeling drugs and their consequences. And that's what it's about. We go over each drug that's common out there, and we talk about all the great reasons why you would want to use this drug. And we talk about it very honestly.
And do any of the children ask you questions or talk back or saying, if this particular drug does this, how high do you get? Do they ask any of those questions?
They do, but, I'm very careful to make sure that although we got it very real, that I don't in any way belittle the reality of that drug, whatever it may be. It's always, you can explain how something makes you feel, but I always make sure that I include the negative side effects that happen. Heroin, in fact, it feels great, but at the same time, you're throwing up about every 20 minutes.
And it's tearing your inside. I've got a thing here. Charles from Blog TV said he gets his drug influence in school. Mm-hmm. And then there's another thing. Charles also said parents work too hard and too long, and they don't care. So parents are working too hard, too long, and they don't care. And that's coming from Charles. I don't know how old Charles, well, I do, because Charles is going to school, so he must be in his teens or something. So he's actually, I don't know if he's saying whether his parents don't care or all parents don't care. Well, not all, but most parents.
You know what? Mom and dad could be jammed and tired. So they're not using their extra energy to look out for these things. And, I really doubt that he's waving his drug use in their face. I bet you they would care if he did it right in front of them. Go ahead. I dare you to do a line in front of mom and dad and see and
see what happens.
They don't care. Yeah, no, they care. It's just they're tired. But there's
so what would you like to tell Charles? Because Charles has come out with something that he gets. He gets the influence of drugs from school, which is telling you either he takes them or doesn't take them, but he understands about them from school. And then he also says that his parents work too hard and too long and don't care. What message would you like to give to Charles out there?
Well, number one, if you're doing drugs, it's time to stop. The sooner the better. That's the easy information. When it comes to his feeling about his parents not caring, I'm not sure. I don't live in his home, but if he feels comfortable enough, I think that's something he might want to bring to their attention. Ask them, do you care about me?
And it's all right to say that. You can, Charles, it's okay to say that.
Why not?
It's funny, there was a program in Los Angeles called the Torch Foundation, and they had it about the kids would come into this little, whatever it was, hall, and it was like a 6-week program, and they would teach the children to actually go to the parents. They said, sometimes you have to go to the parent, because sometimes the parent is a little bit embarrassed, or the parent doesn't know, or the parent doesn't notice these things. So, Charles, I guess what you're saying, go to the parent.
Right. We aren't, as parents, I'm a parent myself, I'm not a mind reader. I mean, my daughter, she lives with a psychologist. Yeah. So I do pick up on certain things, but most parents, they don't have that sense. But even me, with all my training and language and the human condition, there's things that go over my head. If you don't talk, don't expect people to just know what's on your mind. It's your mind. It's a private place until you make it noticed. So if there's things that don't assume anything. None of us should do that in any situation. But so talk to your parents.
Talk to them. Okay. Well, Charles came back again, and apparently he's a latchkey kid, or was a latchkey kid. He is now 33.
Okay.
He is also said to learn about sex in a Catholic school in sex ed. Well, I don't know what that means, but learning about sex in a Catholic school, there's nothing wrong in that, is there?
I don't think so.
I don't think there's anything wrong in learning sex anywhere. Learn it to find out what it is and what's going on. So
Oh, are you kidding? I talk to my kids about sex now, and they're young. It's a real thing.
How old are your kids?
I have a and I have a 14-year-old.
What was the first one?
10.
10
years old.
Sierra Lynn Wilson joined the room, by the way, so we have another one come into the room to listen to us. Hi, Sierra. No, I just said welcome. But so yours are 14 and 10, just the right age to start communicating with the outside world on sex and on drugs.
Right. Because it's there, and kids are doing it earlier and earlier. And I'm a sexual assault specialist, and one of the hardest cases that I had ever been a part of was actually a 5-year-old girl who had been sexually molested by a family member in their home. It's very sad, but it's very real. This stuff is out there. We need to talk to our kids about the real thing. What is really going on? And don't say, don't call your child's parts their cookie. It's a vagina. That's the way it is, because when it comes to court, if something were to happen and that child says he touched my cookie, that doesn't hold up in court. The point is to teach your children about the very real body parts that they have. And
why do you think parents are so embarrassed about teaching their children, all about this stuff? It's like they feel they're too young, or they're too old, or it's never the right time to teach them. And I don't know
why. I really don't get what's up with our culture with that. As much as we put it on TV, we're so embarrassed to talk about it. Now, as a young child, my family had a home in Italy. We used to spend a lot of time in Rome. They're very open about sexuality, and very open about talking about it. And then, to come back home to America, where we're so embarrassed, we don't want to mention it, we blush because of the word sex, God forbid you actually say the word penis. Oh, my gosh.
All right, you just said something. Sierra Lynn Wilson came back with something. She said, when they are little, you shouldn't put it in point blank, which in other words, you shouldn't be so point blank when they're too young. What is your comment on that?
I'd like to know why. Why would you not?
Maybe
because how come, I'm not saying teaching my daughter what sex is, but what is on her body. And what is private to her. And, I'm not teaching them about, how to perform fellatio.
No.
What I'm teaching them is this
It's
is your
body.
body.
Yeah.
Right. The same way this is your elbow, this is your nose.
Yes.
This, whatever it may be. I'm not sure how she's interpreting what I'm saying.
Well, I'm sure she's interpreting it the way she wants to interpret it and the way
Right.
she feels about it. So she's bringing the point up, saying that should you tell a 5-year-old, because that's what we were talking about. So I presume that's what she's probably saying. But that 5-year-old might be a little bit too young. But I think to make a fun thing about a part of your body, like this, it's a cookie, like you said.
Right.
I personally don't think that's correct. I
don't think that's it's not a good idea.
Private part, whatever you want to say, but I think I personally don't think that's a good idea.
Well,
no,
I don't think it's a good idea at all, but we do that because we're embarrassed, because we don't want to say what it really is. Why not? You can tell a 5-year-old that this is your special spot. No one should touch that spot.
Yeah.
For any reason.
Yeah.
You can teach your child what is appropriate on their body to be touched, to not be touched. I'm not talking about going into, the details of sex.
Well, I'm going to change the subject a little bit here
Sure.
because of the killing we just had with all these young children, these 6-year-olds and what have you. And apparently the young man that did this, he was I think had bipolar. I'm not sure, and I'm not going to quote what he had. And obviously he got hold of some guns, or a gun, or whatever it was he got hold of in his family home from his mother. And I'd like to talk a little bit why didn't his mother, when she got all these guns, explain, or probably didn't want to, but that she has a child that's mentally has a problem. And she was allowed to have all these guns in her house. What is the problem here that we're having with not checking who people are that are buying guns? How can we get people to be checked out there to see if they're mentally stable to have a gun?
Well, they're actually trying to get that into effect now, that if you are going to be purchasing a gun, that we see that you are in proper mental health. Now, as far as that situation with a child who had mental health issues in the home, I'm not sure if they knew that before the incident happened or after. I'm not sure the details.
But the mother knew it. But the mother knew.
Okay. Well, if mom knew, the same thing that I say to a lot of people: stop. We got to get real, because you really have a kid who has an emotional disorder in your home, and has access to highly deadly weapons. You be honest, be real with what we're facing today.
Yeah.
Well, he would never do that. Really? Because it's possible. Because you don't know if he has a condition like bipolar disorder, if it's not being treated, or he's just in the beginning stages of treatment, there's really no which way it's going to go.
No, and you don't know, but I just wanted to get the message out there to parents, to be, even if your child is 16, 17, 18, 20, doesn't matter, you still need to kind of watch out with having these guns in your home, or, where they're at, and if they're mentally disturbed, and that. I just think that, that there's got to be a way to get around these problems, and I'm not saying everybody is mentally disturbed that has a gun. Don't misunderstand me out there. Right. What I'm saying is when you bring it into your home, you've got to have that protection. And it's funny, I did a show many years ago about a young girl. She got shot through the neck from her girlfriend was in the house, 2 10-year-olds, and they were playing. The 10-year-old said, let me show you my mother's boyfriend's gun. She went up and she's showing the gun, and she's showing the gun, she shot her friend.
Oh, jeez.
Now that gun was totally not in the open, but it was in a box, and I believe it belonged to an FBI guy. I'm not quite sure, quote unquote, but why would somebody just leave that? And your children are in home. So I think the message I'm getting out there, and what I would like you to sort of explain, that parents, watch your children with guns, with drugs, with everything, and
right.
And what's the easiest way for them to do that, because they are working and they are tired?
Well, there was an invention that came out a long time ago, and I think a lot of people are familiar with it. It's called a lock. And it comes with another device. It's called a key. And what we can do is we can utilize this device called the lock, and we can put these items in a spot that can be locked, where the children can't have access to it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't.
It's very simple, in other words.
Right. It's not. But we're
would
not.
Would that be saying be responsible?
Wow. Yes, that would be very responsible. Because as we were talking about I was thinking, there's a lot of guns in our homes. There's guns, metaphorically, underneath our kitchen sink. There's guns in our medicine cabinets. There's a lot of things that can do a lot of danger to our kids. And there's two things that we can do. We can either deny our children access of those items, or we can teach them of the actual threat that is in our homes.
Absolutely.
So that they don't. A gun that child should have had the impression that a gun is dangerous, that it is not something you...
No, but when you talk about locking that up, how about locking, which sounds awful, but locking these drugs up that these parents are taking for whatever they need to take, which is legally they're taking these drugs. Right. So should they be should parents start sort of worrying about that? Because I don't think enough parents, they say, oh, the child won't reach it. Well, you can go and get a chair and jump up and get the drugs. So how do parents, message out there, how do parents keep drugs away from their kids in the house?
Well, you keep it in a lockbox. That's what I tell a lot of my... I mean, it's that simple. I teach a lot of my clients that if they, have these substances in their homes that are a potential threat, there's nothing wrong with putting something that is just yours in a lockbox. What's wrong with that? I understand it's convenient to be able to have it in a medicine cabinet, and even if your kid's not doing it, they could have a friend over that comes through and opens up your medicine cabinet. Whatever it is, there's no harm in taking the extra precaution.
I got a message back from Charles. We're having a lovely time with Charles, and I want to thank Charles for being so open out there, but he's saying give your Charles a good whipping on the butts. Legal again. Make it legal to give them a little slap against the tushy. Do you know hitting somebody against the tushy never was bad, or the bottom leg? You remember, it was always you hit on the thigh, the bottom of the leg, the calf of the leg. I got a couple of those when I was a kid, and also the tushy. And I don't think it. And you don't even really have to go to that far. And I always say that. Explain to a child who has done something that's really an adult thing to do, explain to them in an adult way, because if they understand what they've done, which is an adult thing they've done, they can understand a lot more than you think they do. So don't talk to your children in a childish manner. If they're capable of doing what they're doing, then talk them one-on-one. I think the greatest thing is say, come, let's sit down, let's not argue about it. I know what you're doing and you know what you're doing. I just happen to find out what you're doing. Now we've got to talk about it. Now, and talk as an adult, because they are doing an adult thing, so they can't be that stupid, and they can't be, a childish person. They've got to be like, hello.
Our children are exposed to things that we never were, and I'd like to believe myself as a fairly young guy. Kids, even today, who are, 15, 20 years younger than I am, are exposed to a lot more media than I ever was, and through that comes a lot of very vague education about a lot of things. So they're exposed to things that I wasn't exposed to, and the more exposure we have, yes, we grow our intellect, but we also grow our understanding of things that we could get into that maybe we shouldn't. That's why I think it's important to always talk to your kids, find out what their interests are, what they have questions about, and have that open conversation, but don't assume anything. Don't assume your kid won't play with that gun.
Of course they will. Sarah Lynn Wilson is back again. She left the room and now she's back again. She says, do you think the same thing goes for people who have multi-personality disorders? That we should, I guess if they've got a multi-personality, obviously they're a little bit sort of, they're ADHD or whatever. What is your answer to that?
I'm not sure what the question...
I don't quite know what the question is, but it says, do you think? So we were obviously talking about something. In other words, multi-personality people that have a disorder, how do we handle them?
Well, I've got to say, I've personally never worked with anyone with multiple personality disorder. Dissociative disorders are actually a lot less common than people believe that they are. Because they're such an interesting disorder, there's a lot of talk about them. There's TV shows and things. Really, when you're working with a patient who has a disorder of that caliber, you really need a specialization in working with a client. So I wouldn't advise on a client or anyone who has addiction. I'm not qualified to answer that question.
No, which is a good. Well, that's the answer she wants, because obviously, you know, if you could answer, you would. But that's, you know, that's obviously they have, you know, many personalities or whatever it is, their disorders, and I guess to handle all of them, it would be, you know, that they really need a specialized person for that. So I guess the answer
Absolutely.
is, Sarah, that you need to find a doctor, or if you're asking about a certain person, to find a specialist in this particular
Yes.
thing they do, because I think
I mean, if a client came to me and they had that disorder, I would do my consultation, but I certainly wouldn't take them on.
No.
But I'd find them a proper referral to get them the help that they needed.
Yeah,
for sure.
Now, normally at the end of my show, I don't have much time left, but I usually ask,
Really?
No, we don't. We got 2 minutes. No, we
Come
don't.
on, we were having fun.
Yeah, having a great time. It is wonderful. But what do you think of the show, and how do you think we can make the show better?
Oh, I think the show is great. I watched quite a few of them when I got word from you. I think it's a great show. How do we make it better?
How do we get
exposure.
More people? Yeah.
The more, look, ever since I knew I was coming on, I've been throwing out Facebook messages. I've been throwing out, it's on the website, everything. We're going to be here, check us out.
I think that's amazing. So on your side, that's what you did. So you went out to Facebook, you went to what, Twitter?
Anything I owned or anything I could access to let people know that this was happening, I used it. And that's the beauty of the internet today, is that
I also noticed that you've actually got yourself together extremely well. You've got your whole Skype background, you've dressed, you did everything. What made you do that like that? Why did you how did you know, in other words?
Well, I think it's important that whatever it is that you're trying to expose to people, that you give it to them, you expose it to them. But I tell you what, your influence was very big. You practically created this environment, because I watched the tips that you gave other people that you had interviewed, and you said, why don't you have a poster in the background? Why don't you do this or do that? And I said, and I wanted to come on your show the way that I feel that you would like it. So I love my suits. You can ask any of my friends, but I made sure that I dressed well because you always present so well. And I gotta say,
I have to cut you. Go ahead.
I'm so glad that you did this interview in the office with all the trophies. I was like, I hope she does it there.
That's my producer makes me do that. He said, you've got to show off all your trophies. On that, there's another thing from Sarah, then we've got to close out. We're way over time. She says, Sarah Lynn Wilson says, I think the show is great. I agree with Todd about exposure. So I'm going to put it out there. We need more exposure. It so happens that I'm just getting myself somebody else that's going to put a lot more exposure into my website and also into PR. So I am definitely going to get exposure out there, because I think we have a lot of great things to say, especially Todd. You've been amazing and you've been wonderful. And this is what people need to know. They need to know about these drugs. You were in it and you did it. So
but recovery is possible. That's the most important thing.
That's his
and it's glorious. Yes.
Recovery is really great and it's glorious. We'll see you next week with Ninon Speaks. Thank you, Todd. Take care. Take care to my audience. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Watch the Maxed Out Money Hour Internet TV show program, All About Money, with your hosts Ninon and Coach Steve, every Tuesday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, at realcoachingradio.net.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Kids Talk Foundation, a global nonprofit organization providing youth advocacy, television programming, and training services in the United States, along with comprehensive medical and educational services for the developing world, most recently in Kenya, Africa, where Kids Talk Foundation provides a feeding program, medical care, and educational services to over 1,300 young people each day. Please help our youth and place your donation. Go to www.kidstalk.org.
You're watching and listening to Conscious Evolution Media, shifting global consciousness at consciousevolutionmedia.com.